Today I'm going to be working on my air compressor. It's a Craftsman brand air compressor. I have it shoved here in a little closet, kind of a junk closet we have in the basement. It's got a concrete ceiling, foundation wall on one side, block wall on the other side. When we moved in, I decided this would be a good place to put my compressor. That way I wouldn't have to listen to it out in the garage and it wouldn't take up space out in the garage. So, see, I ran 3/4 inch PEX out to the garage. And what I did was I put in this outlet, and just this bottom plug here is switched. And I have a switch out in the garage that controls that outlet. So when I'm using the compressor for something or I need air, I turn on the switch, compressor kicks on, builds up the pressure, shuts off, and then when I'm done out in the garage, I shut the switch off, or I forget about it. And yeah, so the issue that I ran into doing this, and I've done some other work since then. You can see I had a bottlenecking issue, so I alleviated that. But anyways, this here is your pressure switch. It's also got an on-off switch there. Power feeding in, high pressure blow off. Then this line here with the cooling fins on it, that is from your compressor. So when you kick it on and the compressor kicks on, that's what's pumping air into the tank. This device here is a check valve. And usually there's a copper tube that goes from here up underneath the pressure switch. I don't even know where the copper piece went. So what happens is when the compressor gets to maximum pressure and shuts off the compressor, there's a little part of the switching mechanism up under here that would push on a valve, and what it would do is bleed off the pressure on the pressure side of the compressor. So basically this line coming from the compressor to the tank would be depressurized, so that next time when the compressor has to kick on, there's no pressure pushing against the head, so it makes it so that the compressor will start a lot easier. And the issue that I ran into is that little switch there, it's only activated when you shut this switch off or when it reaches full pressure. So when you have the compressor kicked on and you gotta shut it off for some reason, or whatever, if it's running and you shut that switch off, it screws things up. It leaves pressure in the cylinder head and it won't start back up until you decompress the whole. You basically, I guess you could reach up underneath there and try to decompress that line, but that was the issue I had. When I first did this, I was like, oh, this is awesome. I turned it on, I shut it off, and then I couldn't get it kicked back on. It would, when it tried to run, it would pop the circuit breaker here on the back of the motor. And so that was what I finally figured out, which wasn't a huge deal. I just made sure that whenever I shut it off, the compressor wasn't running, and I never had any issues with it. So now I need to figure out a way to bleed off the pressure on the line from the compressor when this is shut off. And the main reason I'm doing this is because of the copper tube that went in here. I rebent it and tried to put it back in, and I accidentally cross-threaded the piece of the valve underneath here. So I was like, it'd be good to fix this anyways. So we're gonna change it up a little bit. So what I'm gonna do is, I don't have the parts yet, but they're on order. I'm gonna get a normally open 120 volt solenoid valve, and I get a fitting to go from this to that valve, and then just leave the other side open. And then I'm going to wire that to the motor side of my connection in here. So what that'll do is, anytime there's not power going to that solenoid, that valve's going to be open. And as soon as the compressor kicks on and puts power to the motor, it's going to tell that solenoid valve to shut off. And when it does that, it'll close, allowing the compressor to build air inside the tank. And as soon as it reaches pressure, or if I shut the power off to it, as soon as I do that, it's going to kill power to that solenoid valve and it's going to open it up. So this will be a lot better setup. I think it'll work a lot better. Alright, so this is inside of your pressure switch. Of course, anytime you're working with electric, make sure that you turn off the power. So you can see there's 4 screws here. You got your blacks up top, your white on the bottom. Not that it really makes much of a difference, but this is your load side, this is your line side over here, and it actually says right there line supply, and see there says load or mode, and then your ground is just back here. You got 2 there, and they screw into the metal case of the pressure switch. But basically you're going to go white to white, black to black, green to green, and basically what this does is when this pressure switch tells the compressor that it needs air, it will connect the circuit from your line to your load. It'll send power to your solenoid valve telling it to close, and it'll also turn on the compressor simultaneously, so it'll send air into the tank, and then as soon as the compressor reaches capacity and opens the circuit, it'll cut power to your solenoid valve, open it up, and it'll bleed off the line pressure. Bought this pack of tie wraps the other day from my local Lowe's. I didn't realize someone had already pulled the seal off of it, so that's awesome. I'm gonna count them later and make sure I have 100. Oh crap, come on. I also bought a package of PEX fittings, or crimp rings. They were also open. This is the best. Alright, so our solenoid valve came in. And I just got a diffuser for it, just to muffle it so it doesn't make a lot of noise when the compressor shuts off. That's going to go right in there, like so. Alright, so then there's this cover here that goes over your electrical connections. It's a screw that holds it in place. Pop that screw out and it pops right off. And there's a little rubber gasket that covers that. Just like that. That pops out, and there's little screw connections for each of your wires. Alright, so I got my threaded piece there and my rubber grommet on. So I'm going to go ahead and slide this up into this piece as well. It's kind of a pain because I'm using wire that's a little bit bigger than I think was intended for this device. So the ground is going to my center terminal, and then because this is AC, it doesn't matter where the other 2 wires go. Right, so now that all of our wires are hooked up, we can try to feed this whole cord back down in there. Now this thing should be ready to rock and roll. Make sure I got it turned off. So there you have it. Seems to be working well. Got a little bit of a leak here, so I'll have to tighten that down a little bit. But yeah, now when you unplug it, it releases the pressure in on the high side there of the compressor line, and that makes it so it can restart next time. So now if I'm out in the garage and I shut the switch off to it, I don't have to worry about there being pressure in the line still. So this is a much better setup, and I think it'll work out well for me. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe, like the video. You don't have to listen to me. Don't do either of those. Dislike the video, because it sucked.